Thank you for joining this training industry webinar, 8 Essential Process Capabilities of Great Training Organizations, a discussion of the research behind the Certified Professional in Training Management Program. In this webinar, we will cover the research that drove the creation of the Certified Professional in Training Management Program, including the specific process capabilities and practices identified in the research and how they have been translated into the CPTM program. We'll discuss how these skills and tools are used in the real world by a training leader and close with a description of the process to earn the certification. Now, please let me introduce you to our speakers. Doug Harward is the CEO and founder of Training Industry and is internationally recognized as an expert in training and outsourcing business models and works closely with organizations of all sizes, from international organizations and startups, as they build and optimize their training organizations. Dr. Amy DuVernay is the Director of Certification Programs at Training Industry and manages the Certified Professional in Training Management Program. She holds a PhD in Industrial and Organizational Psychology from NC State University and is also a CPTM. We are also joined by 2 CPTM program graduates. Dr. Latasha Moss is with Gentiva Health Services, an affiliate of Kindred at Home and a division of Kindred Healthcare, where she is a senior learning and performance design specialist. In her role, she oversees the design, development, and deployment of all learning solutions and is also responsible for content management. We're also pleased to have with us Amanda Locke, who is the training manager for customer-facing operations group at Olympus America. Welcome to everyone. We'll begin with Doug Harward.
Thanks, Leah, and thanks to all of you for attending today's program and for coming to learn more about the research that we've been doing around what makes a great training organization, but really more the research about what information we use to develop this program called the CPTM, or Certified Professional in Training Management. In just a few minutes, you're going to have the opportunity to hear more from Latasha and Amanda and Amy, where they'll talk more about the program. But what I'd like to do is start by talking more about how this program called CPTM actually began. And it's a topic that something I've been very interested in for many, many years, which was trying to understand more about what are those things that really drive great training organizations, or what are the practices and capabilities that differentiate, let's call it, an average performing training organization and one that performs at a very, very high level, which we actually like to term a great training organization. Now, to answer the question, a number of years ago, my business partner, Ken Taylor, and I wanted to understand exactly what we were just talking about. Is what are those characteristics, what are the attributes, what are the practices of training organizations that really perform at a high level? And we found it very important to understand, because there's a lot of information out in the marketplace been published about you should do this and you should do that, and we really wanted to separate and understand what really are those practices that separate one great training organization from another. And what we found was there are a number of and I'm going to ask Leah to help change the slide for me if you don't mind. There's some research. What we found was that through our research, was that there are a number of practices that really that you can really see in high-performing training organizations. And the way we did this research is we went out and talked to a lot of different training professionals from a lot of different sectors in the marketplace, and we ended up hearing from over 2,000 professionals in a lot of different industry sectors, a lot of different verticals, and we also talked to people at a lot of different levels of the training organization. So one thing we were very, very pleased with was that we had great representation, meaning we got information from a lot of different people, so it wasn't just looking at a small slice of the pie. So we were very pleased with that. And what we learned from the research was there's 8 process capabilities that really define high-performing or great training organizations. And those process capabilities are really around some things that you would kind of take for granted. As you can see on the chart, things like content development, delivery, and things like that. But there's also some capabilities here that we learned about about high-performing training organizations that we tend to not always think about or we sometimes even take them for granted. And we're going to learn more about these capabilities in just a few minutes as Amy starts walking us through those. But what we want you to really grasp here is the idea that there are clearly some things that high-performing training organizations do, and within each of these capability areas, there's a set of practices associated with each that if you implement those practices and do those things in your organization, you can really make some instrumental change in your organization. Now, with that, that's why we kind of termed our strategy around this program called CPTM, and we really called this thing, this strategy, Lead the Change. And Lead the Change is not just a slogan, it's really a kind of our philosophy about how we're looking at the CPTM program and how we're trying to develop leaders of training organizations. What we believe is that the CPTM program is really about a philosophical change towards how you manage a training organization. And those people who are who graduate through the program, who move through the program and learn these particular strategies and techniques and practices are really those who we believe are going to be instrumental in leading the change and really the ones who can help design and make an impact in their organization. So with that, what I'm going to do is turn it over to Amy now, and Amy's going to speak more about these particular capability areas, and then we'll come back and we'll talk some more about other parts of the program just a little bit later too. So Amy, let me turn it over to you.
Great, thanks Doug. So what we see here on the screen is kind of the culmination of that 8 years of research. One of the main points that we looked at is what are those process capabilities that define a high-performing training organization, and how important or critical are they to that high-performing training organization. So we know through our research that each of these 8 process capabilities are incredibly important to a high-performing training organization, but what we've seen is that consistently across all of our years of research, strategic alignment remains the sort of top process capability for a high-performing training organization. So regardless of the training solution you choose or the program you put in place, the most important consideration is that that program or that solution be aligned with the business goals of the organization. So what I'm going to do is kind of touch on these top 4 process capabilities: strategic alignment, content development, delivery, and diagnostics. And the first one is strategic alignment, which, as I noted, is most critical, with 78% of learning leaders identifying it as the most critical for a great training organization. When we talk about strategic alignment, what we're really talking about is designing learning programs that align with business objectives. What you see on the screen here is the best practices that make up strategic alignment.
Now, one of the things that we also learned here is that when we were studying the different capabilities, that strategic alignment really separated itself from all the others. And what was interesting about it was that we found that a lot of training organizations that did not perform at a very high level or high performing way actually operated somewhat in a vacuum, meaning they didn't go out to their constituents or their customers or their clients and really understand what their requirements are, and they developed programs or offered or procured programs that weren't strategically aligned to the needs of the business. And that's why we look at portfolio management in another way as kind of that approach. So Amy, take it and give us some more information about that.
Yeah, so exactly. So that's really why in the CPTM program we developed content that would help you work with executive leadership to define those learning objectives and to establish those agreed upon metrics that you can use to define success within the training organization. Building those connections and building a working relationship between the training function and senior leadership is really key to strategic alignment and ultimately to your ability to be successful and get that seat at the table. Next on our list is content development, and this has been identified pretty consistently as our second most important process capability for a great training organization. And I'm sure this is pretty familiar to most of you on the webinar, but what content development really means is assessing, designing, managing, and maintaining content for that training organization. There are several key practices to consider around content development to support a high-performing training organization. For example, a training manager must ensure that the learner's experience will be engaging and interactive. And CPTM gives you some of the techniques and tools that you need to achieve this. Like teaching you how to involve experts, using examples that are relevant to both your industry and to the specific job, and providing research-based information. In content development, it's critical that your content is relevant to your audience. And to do this, you have to use thought leaders from your industry and company, and you have to really leverage their experience to make sure that that content is relevant to the learner and, again, strategically aligned to the business organization. Next on our list is delivery, which is our third most important process capability. Delivery is really speaking towards managing a network of instructors and delivering content using multiple modalities. And what we see here are the practice capability, or the best practices that make up this process capability and really act as critical drivers of success for the training organization. What this basically says is now that we have great content, we need to deliver it in a way that sets up the learner for success. The high-performing training organization uses methods of delivery that are focused on the learner, and that means delivering training in a convenient location or delivery modality at convenient times and scaling the training program to meet learners' needs, such as offering the courses in multiple formats or making sure that you're using the right instructors or the right presenters. Finally, diagnostics is the last of the four process capabilities we're going to review here today. And diagnostics is really talking about identifying the root causes of problems and making recommendations to address those problems. This capability is at the core of the CPTM program. The CPTM program focuses on making sure CPTMs are prepared to go out and identify business needs, and then convert those needs into solutions. Our research has found that this capability is often missing from organizations. Training organizations tend to think that they're doing very well at this, but what we see is that those perceptions are not aligned with that of the business leaders and the learners themselves. That means that this is a really great opportunity for growth and improvement in this process capability. And this is one where we can leverage the best practices of the high-performing training organization to really impact the training impact on the organization. So those are just the top 4 process capabilities identified in the research. All 8 of these are very, very important and were very important to us as we developed the program. I should note that CPTM came together in a partnership between training industry and in the development of a body of knowledge based on our research, and then partnering with Pearson in designing the courseware. The program that came from this collaboration takes each of these process capabilities and translates them into tools and techniques designed to be used in the real world to help the learning leader and to implement what we've identified as best practices in training management. So to talk more about that, we are so glad to be joined by 2 CPTM alumni, Latasha Moss of Gentiva Health Services and Amanda Locke of Olympus America. Thank you both for being here. Latasha, we'll start with you. Let me ask you, can you tell us a little bit about your CPTM experience and why you pursued the certification and how has it impacted your work at Gentiva?
Definitely, and thank you so much for having me today. I pursued a certification in training management through the training industry last March. And I think I really want to kind of tackle this question from the perspective of when I considered myself a certified professional in training management. I really want to start by saying I consider this hands down to be the best investment I've ever made on continuing education and professional development. At the point that I signed up, I truly believed that I was already a professional in training management and that this certification was just probably going to identify a few areas that I could become a little bit more knowledgeable about but that for the most part, I was already modeling what the industry would consider a training professional. And I was very wrong about that. What I learned through the CPTM is that the concepts contained within the CPTM aren't new, but the paradigm in which they're applied is fundamentally different. A lot of learning organizations haven't yet shifted away from being learner-centric to being business-centric. And like many of my counterparts, I couldn't prove that my organization was any different. So what the CPTM did for me was it removed me from that space of being just a mere practitioner, and it elevated me to the status of being a true learning leader. And it did so by highlighting the practices and competencies employed by high-performing learning organizations, explaining the rationale and the research behind the use and efficiency of these practices, and providing me an opportunity to go back to my organization and reassess it using my newfound perspective. So I consider myself having become a certified professional in training management, not at the point that I actually earned my certification last March, but at the point that I could, without pause, apply the competencies and practices described throughout the program without question as to whether or not my organization was benefiting from the solutions I proposed as, after. So that's when I became a CPTM.
That's great. I love hearing that, Latasha. Just as a follow-up question, can you tell us just a little bit about your experience in the CPTM process and program and how it went for you?
It was amazing from the perspective of you guys have very knowledgeable facilitators, and it was a great group of people, forward-thinking people who really wanted to be able to go back out into their organizations and really lead that change that Doug referenced earlier in terms of that paradigm shift. So there were great cohorts involved in the process, and I learned a lot from them. The information was sound. It was, there were very seldom areas in which I questioned the content that was being relayed, and to back that information not only with the research but very qualified, highly experienced facilitators to help kind of cement it with some real-world experiences that they were able to share. So the program overall was very easy. Not easy from it was easy with regard to navigating the entire process. You guys laid it out very fluidly for everyone, and so it made it very easy to navigate.
Great, great. Thank you, Latasha. So now I'd like to turn to Amanda Locke from Olympus America. Amanda, can you also tell us about sort of why you chose to pursue this credential and how it's impacted your work in your role at Olympus?
Sure. I pursued this particular certification because I really felt like most of the other programs I had been evaluating really did focus on the learning content and developing learning. This one felt different to me because it was focused on the business and aligning with the business goals. And that was really where I wanted to go. I had already taken a number of programs on learning development and content development and delivery methods, but the business focus of this is what drew me into this program. And so what I've done with it is my role, I support 5 customer-facing operations departments. And so knowing that alignment with business goals is really critical, I really didn't have the tools that I needed to do that effectively. And the CPTM program really, for me, underscored not only the importance of that business alignment, but it gave me the tools to understand the needs, and it gave me a method to reach out to the directors of these 5 departments to really ask them what their goals were, and then to be able to come back to them with suggestions and say, okay, well, here is what I can do for you from a learning perspective to help you achieve your goals, and get their feedback and really have that back and forth discussion. And so what I've seen is I have met with all of them now, and from that I've pulled out what all 5 departments have focused on as topics that would really benefit all 5 of them together, because I have a very small team. I have 1 person on my team besides myself. So we're going to focus on what would benefit all 5 first. And what we've already seen is that it's already improving the communication between the departments, and it's going to enable an increased efficiency in our onboarding and in the way that we can serve our customers.
That's great. That's really great. So same kind of follow-up question. Can you also talk a little bit about your experience going through the program?
I had a great experience. I loved this program. And I would totally agree with Latasha that it's probably the best program I've taken. There's a lot of material, a lot of information, and you focus on it one topic at a time, but they all blend together really nicely. They're put together in a way that makes sense, and it does give you that, how do you apply this? It's not all theory. The cohort practicum was fantastic. The group of people that came together, I did mine in Boston, was amazing. And we had some really great discussions, and we're still connected. And it's nice to have that group of people who you can go, now look, I'm trying to align this piece here. Do you have any recommendations? So it's not just a once and done course. It's an ongoing relationship that was built through this program. But the material was very practical, very hands-on, and I think that was really, really critical for me. And so it's not just theory, but it's the tools to go back and apply it.
That's great. Exactly, Amanda. I think that's one of the sort of hidden benefits of CPTM is those relationships and that network that you form as you're going through the program. So thank you both, Amanda and Latasha, for sharing your experience with us. This is kind of exactly what we were hoping, is that we would hear from our CPTM alumni that the program really impacted the way that they approach problems in the workplace and help them to create that strategic alignment and to implement those best practices. So the practical application of both the 8 process capabilities identified in our research, combined with our 7 competencies of a training manager that we defined and developed with Pearson, resulted in this Certified Professional in Training Management program, which is genuinely unique because it's focused on preparing learning leaders with the knowledge and skills and capabilities that they need to change the business of training. So I'm going to kick it to Doug, who will tell us a little bit about each of these 2 bodies of knowledge that make up the Certified Professional in Training Management program.
Thanks, Amy. And so you've heard now about a couple of different bodies of knowledge that make up the program. The one on the right refers to the 8 capabilities of great training organizations, which Amy laid out, and where you can see strategic alignment is at the center of that, or the core of that. And on the left side, a triangular model that looks at the 7 core responsibilities of the training manager. When we were putting the content together, one of the things we wanted to make sure we did was to teach an approach that allowed the manager themselves to focus on what do they need to do themselves, what is it that they're responsible for, and what are the things that they have to do to be successful. And in alignment with that, then looking at the organization and then saying, okay, so I'm responsible for this, then what should my organization be doing? Because managers lead and really drive the things that their organization does. So what we try to do is bring both of these together in the bodies of knowledge. So as we go through content in the program, what you will see is we're focused on the manager themselves and talking about and teaching those things that a manager should do, but also aligning it to, now what should you do with your organization? What are the capabilities that you need to be driving, and what are those practices that the organization should be doing? And so we bring those 2 bodies of knowledge into one program to get really one perspective for the CPTM. Now, Amy, I'll pass it back to you to talk about the experience.
Great, thanks, Doug. So yeah, we'll talk briefly about how the CPTM program works and the steps that you can take to go about earning your certification. And the CPTM program is designed as a package. So when you register, your fee is going to cover the entire program. This means that as part of your program, you'll get access to all of the online modules, the course materials, the practicum of your choosing, and the exam and certification as well. So there's no hidden costs or surprises that will come up between the time you register and the time you earn your certification. There's 3 main steps, and we'll talk through each of those steps here. So the first step is going to be the online modules. After you register, you'll receive a link and login to the online self-paced CPTM modules and study guides. These modules are completed on your own time. There are 10 modules, and they each take about 2 hours each. We use a blended approach. So the online modules are going to include tons of videos and interactive questions. They're really designed to be engaging and to be interactive for you as a learner. We recommend that you allow yourself somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to complete these so that you are using a distributed learning technique and that you are making sure that you give yourself enough time to complete them. Having said that, they are self-paced, so what we've seen is that some students do complete the program in a much shorter period of time. It's really at your discretion. So the next step in the process is the practicum. The practicum is an interactive workshop and course that's designed to simulate the real experiences of a training manager. There are 2 ways to complete the practicum. You can either choose to engage in a 3-day in-person session, which is going to be scheduled in locations around the U.S. year-round, or you can choose a 4-day virtual practicum session. Now, this session is live online and completed in real time from the location of your choosing, and it's really designed to simulate that face-to-face experience to make sure that they're equivalent regardless of the type of practicum that you choose. In the practicum, teams of learners are faced with a business problem, and they're asked to use those diagnostic tools that they've learned about in the online modules to really identify the root cause of the problem and determine what the best solution will be. The practicum culminates with those teams presenting their solution to their constituents and really selling that recommendation as they would have to their own organization's leaders. The final step is the certification exam. After the practicum, the CPTM exam is completed independently by each student. You can do it from the location of your choosing. It's a 2-hour online exam, and the purpose is really to make sure that the learner understands all of the materials and can really demonstrate the capabilities to apply those on the job. So again, the whole process is 3 steps. It takes somewhere between 4 to 6 weeks to complete, and the CPTM certification is good for 2 years. There is a recertification requirement of 24 hours every 2 years, and Training Industry provides several ways for CPTMs to easily earn those hours. So one of the sort of exclusive opportunities for CPTMs is a virtual roundtable series entitled Through the Leader's Lens, in which we explore emerging topics and build connections between CPTM alumni. We also offer special events to CPTMs, including events at our annual Training Industry Conference and Expo each spring. If you'd like to learn more about the CPTM program, or if you have questions, please visit our program website at cptm.trainingindustry.com or contact us by email.